Okay, I have a nice lick for you today. It's a G minor, G Dorian kind of a thing. And as usual with these videos, I'm of course going to show you how to play the lick, but I'm also going to be talking about what's going on behind the lick. So I'm going to be talking about some fretboard knowledge kind of stuff, going to be talking about technique, rhythm, modes, triads, all kinds of things. So you come out of this lesson not only knowing a nice lick, but also being able to understand what's going on and perhaps be able to come up with some similar ideas of your own. So let's get to it. The lick goes like this. We're in the key of G minor, but there's a definite Dorian flavour to the chords that I'm playing over and to the lick itself. So what exactly does that mean? Well, the Dorian scale or the Dorian mode, the easiest way to think about it for me is it's a natural minor scale with an altered sixth degree. You've got a natural six instead of a flat six. So if we take this G root note down here, the G natural minor scale, just the G minor scale you can call it, is G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat and F. And to turn that into the G Dorian mode, you just have to think about the sixth degree of this scale, which in the natural minor scale this is an E flat. We can just raise that by one fret. The E flat becomes an E, and now we've got this sound. That's the Dorian sound. So just one note different from the natural minor scale, but it does create a very different musical feeling. And the chords I was playing over were essentially just G minor going to C major, and that chord progression itself has got that Dorian sound built into it. It's important to realise that the Dorian mode isn't just a scale, it's a harmony as well. It's chords. You can have modal chord progressions, and this is a very simple example of that. With this chord progression, G minor is established as the one chord, as the home chord, but then we go to a four chord. C is the root, but instead of the C minor chord, which you would expect in a natural minor kind of a situation, this is a C major chord, and that means we've got this E note involved, and as we've just seen from the scale, that E is our natural sixth. So the fact that we've got a minor one chord with a major four chord which contains that major sixth, that outlines that Dorian sound. So improvising over that chord progression, the Dorian mode is going to be a perfect fit. I mean, you can do other things over that chord progression. You could just play the G minor pentatonic scale, the G blues scale, that's going to work. But if you really want to bring out that Dorian flavour, it's all about that natural sixth note. And that's really what was going on with my lick. I wasn't really playing the Dorian mode. I wasn't thinking about the Dorian mode. I was thinking more about a G minor sound with a natural sixth. So a G minor arpeggio with a natural sixth, just a G minor sixth arpeggio perhaps. So let's look at how that might work on the guitar. So you've got your minor arpeggio, which is just a G, a B flat and a D. That's the root, flat third and the fifth. And you can add in that E to give you the major sixth. So that's a G minor six arpeggio. You can carry that into the next octave. And it's a great and very useful sound, and to me it gets you the essence of that Dorian flavour without having to play the entire scale. We've really just got that minor sound, that minor triad, and then we're adding in that major sixth, that E note, which is the defining note of the Dorian sound. It's that character note which is important to get in there. If you don't have that note in there, it could be just a natural minor scale. So I want to sort of emphasize that natural sixth. Let's think about some ways that we can get that kind of minor sixth sound into our playing. And I've not personally sat down and worked on my minor 6 arpeggios in all the caged positions or whatever it might be. That's just not something I've ever done. Not something I think would be particularly useful. But I do like to use that sound, so I kind of come at it from a slightly different perspective. And one way of doing it perhaps might be to think about a minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. And if you notice the arpeggio that I just played, that G minor 6 arpeggio, it is identical to an E minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. It's the same notes, starting from a different point. So those two arpeggios are relative to one another. They share the same notes. So if you're familiar with your minor 7 flat 5 arpeggios, this would be one way of getting that minor 6th sound. So you just have to think about playing the minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio off of the 6th degree of the chord that you're playing over. So if you're playing over G, 6 degrees the E, from that E you play a minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. So that certainly works. Some jazz players like to think in those terms. But another perhaps simpler way of accessing that sound, and this is the way that I like to do it, and I don't like to overcomplicate things unless it's absolutely necessary. I like to keep things simple, and the best way to do it for me is just to think in terms of G minor triads and then adding in that extra note, that major 6th, that E note. So you could think about it like this. We've got a G minor triad, so starting on the G, B flat and D, that's the root, flat 3rd and 5th. The 6th is going to be 2 frets above the 5th, and there we have our minor 6 arpeggio, just a simple 1 octave minor 6 arpeggio. And you could think about finding that extra note and just embellishing your basic triad shapes. So if you know your triad inversions, we've got root position G minor here. The next one is going to be the first inversion triad shape, so B flat, D and G. And this is the D note, this is the 5th, so we can add in our E here. We've got another useful little shape. That falls very naturally under the fingers, that one. It's a kind of diamond shape to it. And then the next arpeggio inversion will be this one. This is the second inversion, so we've got D, G and B flat, and once again if we add in this E, it's 2 frets above the D, the 5th. Got another useful little shape, and you can play that extra note. Sometimes you've got a choice of where you play it. I could play that note there, or I could play the same note down here on the next string on the 9th fret. So up to you where you play it. I might play it in different places depending on the lick or the situation. So that would be a good exercise, I think, just finding your triad inversions and then adding in that extra note. And you could try that on the next set of strings as well. So strings 1, 2 and 3, we've got a G minor arpeggio here. Add in the extra note, and here, and if you add in the extra note, and again up here. So with this shape here, you've got your minor triad. You can play the 6th up here, which is 2 frets above the 5th, or you can play it down below the root, so 3 frets below the root. Anyway, let's move on to the lick itself, and it's coming right out of these shapes that I just discussed. So it started off like this. So just going through those embellished triads, if you like. So starting down in the 3rd position, just descending through that shape. So starting on the E and descending that G minor arpeggio, and then I'm sliding up into the next shape, into the next inversion. So sliding up to this B flat and climbing up through that shape, coming back down again, and then sliding up to the next shape this D here, and hammering in to the E, and ending on this B flat. And I'm going for quite a legato sound with this, so I'm throwing in some hammer-ons and pull-offs, some slides. I'm not picking unless it's necessary here, so I'm pulling off, sliding here, hammer. Here I've got a slide and a hammer, and then climbing up to this B flat. And just a little fingering thing here, so it makes sense for me to get onto my second finger there, and then I'm in the right place for the next shape. And I'm on my second finger here, and I'm using my little finger for this hammer on. So that's the basic lick, and I'm playing this in mostly a 16th note kind of rhythm, but I think the danger sometimes with licks like this is you just fall into a very predictable rhythm, so it's all 8th notes or it's all 16th notes. So I did try to mix it up a little bit here, and I start off with 16th notes, but there are some notes which are kind of syncopated or tied into the next notes. So in time this lick is 1, 2, 3, 4. So in particular this note here, just holding that a little bit longer. So that's the main lick, but in my little demo at the start of this video I wanted to show how you could take that lick and embellish it a little bit and play it in some slightly different ways. So I think I repeated that phrase twice, then I filled in some space just with a little bit of bluesy G minor pentatonic stuff, and then I went into another lick which is a similar idea but played on the top 3 strings. So that went like this. So the shapes I've already discussed, just these triads with the extra note. I was starting at the top of these shapes here, just descending as far as this D and then climbing up again. Sliding on the first string into the next shape. I've got this lower E note here. Again, sliding into the next shape. So sliding with my first finger up to this high G. And I just wanted to mix up the rhythm here. So I was starting off with 16th notes here. I went to triplets, again, just to try and keep things interesting rhythmically. I didn't just want to do continuous 8th notes or continuous 16th notes. So just switching to triplets is another way of getting more mileage out of these basic ideas. And ending with a bend. So that's pretty much it, and if it would be helpful I can just play through each of those licks at a slightly slower speed. And I'm just going to turn on the overdrive here, so we've got and lick number 2. There we are, those are the licks. Have a play around with those licks. Have a play around with these concepts in general. I mean, this kind of minor 6 sound is a very useful sound, and you can use it in that kind of obvious Dorian context, but you can also just try it over any minor chord. If you're on a minor chord for any period of time, you can always throw in that major 6, even if it's not strictly speaking a kind of modal situation. You can kind of force this sound against any minor chord and it could work and it could be interesting. Briefly, the gear that I'm using today, not actually much to say. I'm using my Trent Model 1 and I'm enjoying this middle pickup position here. There's a pair of P90s here and both of them on at the same time. Sounds great to me. And as far as amp goes, I'm actually using my Kemper Profiler today. And I'm just using one of the presets in that. It's called 57 Deluxe 5. So I'm assuming that's a 1957 Fender Deluxe perhaps, but it sounds good to me, kind of medium overdrive kind of a sound. I've not tweaked the preset, it just kind of sounded good to me as soon as I plugged in, and that's one of the things that I like about the Kemper. It's just a very convenient and easy way to get good sounds. That's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you want tab for this one, then that's going to be up on my Patreon page, and I'm going to write out exactly what I played at the start of this video. So it's going to be the lick, but also those in between kind of noodly bits for those of you who are interested in learning that. And I'm also going to post my backing track up there, and it's a fun backing track to play over. I'm not quite sure what kind of a vibe I was going for on the backing track, but it turned out a little bit 80s with kind of drum machines and synths. So it's lots of fun to play over, whether you're playing the lick itself or you just want to play over it using the G Dorian mode or the G minor pentatonic scale. So check out my Patreon page for those if you're interested. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.